Wattson has been out for about 2 weeks now, and though that's not a very long period of time and that we'll see a lot more strategy discovered later down the track, we've got a pretty good idea of where she stands in the current meta and what she can offer your teams that other characters just can't. First, I want to give a quick rundown of her abilities in case you aren't very aware of how she works, though I'm sure most of you are by now. The active ability summons up to 12 electrical pylons that can be connected together to form an electric fence. The base of these electrical pylons can be shot and broken, which sounds like they'd be easy to remove, but what you'll find with the way Wattson plays and the way you put those fences up, you can hide the bases behind terrain or behind a door to make sure that the fence still covers that door, but you can't actually get into a position to remove them unless you get very close, and a lot of the time that is kind of where Wattson wants you to be. Now, this ability is definitely a deterrent more than anything else. It doesn't do much damage if you phase through it, however it will tell the Wattson exactly when you've passed through it, much like when a Mirage decoy gets shot, but it also slows you down just like an Arc Star would if you take damage from it. And what the Wattson wants to do is set up those fences in a way that if someone tries to pass through them, she'll be able to take advantage of how slow and how disoriented they are to quickly take them out. The damage doesn't come from the fence, more that it slows them down and it puts them into a spot that they really don't want to be in. Her passive ability, which sounds super boring on paper, is that ultimate accelerants charge her ultimate up fully, which I'll get to in a bit, and it doesn't make much sense as to how effective that actually is until you realize how powerful her ultimate ability is. So the ultimate accelerants fully charge her ult. You'll find that a lot of Wattson players, and what was previously a pretty useless item for nearly every single character in the game, it all of a sudden has a pretty good use on Wattson, and we'll get to why that works so well in a second. The ultimate ability summons up an electrical generator of sorts that makes a shitload of noise and does its best to cause seizures if you stand too close to it. It's a little more useful than that though, as this bad boy will shoot down projectiles while they're in the air, such as grenades or even certain ultimates like that, so long as they're in its line of sight. This gives you a level of safety from thrown weapons that we really haven't had before. A lot of the time in Season 1, where you had the core meta of Pathfinder, Wraith, and Lifeline, there's no real protection against grenades, and grenades ended up becoming a thing that most squads would have 10 plus of available to them at any one time because of how powerful they are as a tool to remove a team from a favorable position. The main idea behind this ultimate is to stop that from happening. It gives your team a level of safety when you hunker down in a way that nobody has ever really been able to replicate character-wise before, and you'll see how powerful this is later on when I get to talking about it. It also slowly recharges your shields if you stand next to it over a period of time, but not significant enough to drastically change a fight that's already happening. It's just a nice little touch to have. The catch for this ultimate is it works just as well for your enemies as it does for you. It will take down any grenade that is thrown in its radius, and that includes your own. It'll take your caustic ultimates out of the sky. If your Bangalore tries to throw her ultimate down while it's up, then it just won't work. So it's something to keep in mind when you're playing with a Wattson, that generator could screw you over as much as it will screw the other team. The other thing is this thing's pretty big and it's very easy to shoot. It's very obvious where it is, like I said before, like there's a giant flashing light going around it. You have to be very careful with where this ability gets placed because it's pretty much the easiest ability to shoot down in the game. So you really need to be careful where you place this thing. And this all kind of ties into how she should be played. All of her abilities require a lot of protection that open areas of the map just can't really provide, and getting the most out of this character will need a lot more forward thinking and setting up your abilities in places where they can be well protected before a fight goes down. Trying to get these things up while you're in the middle of a fight is practically impossible. You want to be able to have these things down before the enemy comes towards you. Now that all that general character info is out of the way, the all-important question, is she good? I've seen a lot of Reddit posts about Mirage decoys being sent into abandoned electrical fences, revealing her across the map, and just stupid shit like that, like claiming that her abilities are too easy to shoot and they're too weak. And honestly, I think everyone's just missing the point. This character isn't anything like we've ever seen before. You can't play her as aggressively as you would with the Season 1 meta characters of Lifeline and Wraith and Pathfinder, things like that. That's not her point. This character enables a style of play that is so strong in Season 2 that my answer to the question is that she is probably one of, if not the strongest character in the game in the early few weeks of Season 2 that we've seen so far. And it'll all make sense when I tell you why. So we've all played ranked a bit by now, like we've all played a lot of it no matter what rank we're at. As we all predicted, the ranking system plays off the rule set of pretty much every other battle royale there is out there, where it's a combined number of kill points and placement points to determine how well you placed in that particular game. And I think this system favors her massively. Before, we had no real reason for placement other than elite queue, which was a testing grounds more than anything else. The nature of battle royale games is at heart that they do have a heavy amount of RNG, and that reason is why a lot of the esports scene is so dismissive of them. This debate is kind of another kettle of fish entirely, and I don't want to touch on it here, but what I want to talk about here is how much this character excels in a meta where placement points are hugely important. Before Season 2, the best character that we had defensively, ability-wise, was arguably Caustic, because his toxic traps were the only really ability-based deterrent we had in getting another squad to second guess whether they wanted to push us or not. And we know why that didn't work. Caustic was not very good in Season 1 compared to the rest of the characters, and on top of that, given that, like I said, the only thing that was defensive about him was the toxic traps, they recharged at such a slow rate that if you wanted to push a Caustic that had already set up in a defensive position, you could just send nades in there, or you could just shoot his traps out if you could see them, and it would get to a point where he'd run out of traps because they charged at such a slow rate that it was all but a matter of time until you're then pushing a team that has a Caustic on it. His hitbox sucked, there was no other way around it. He just wasn't any good, and for that reason, a defensive style of play was hard to come by. Now that Wattson is here, we have the very first defensive unit in the game that can truly shine on her own and enable a style of play that, like I said before, it just didn't exist in the game beforehand. Team and I have been playing ranked mode on the NA servers, as OCE queues above gold pretty much are insanely long depending on the time of day, and queuing on the North American servers with 250 ping against the current top teams in that region makes gunfights insanely difficult, so we started experimenting with other ideas. And what we found was that a Wattson strategy with a little sprinkling of Caustic on the side, a newly buffed Caustic mind you, is insanely effective, not just for players like us at a huge ping disadvantage, but just the game meta in general. This is not to say that Caustic is required for Wattson to be effective. I don't agree with that. The most common composition that you'll run into in Diamond Plus is Wattson, Wraith and Pathfinder, because you get two incredibly forward characters that have an ability to take positioning that no other characters can, as well as having a really strong backbone in Wattson to then defend those positions. Whether you like it or not, competitive battle royales all devolve into a similar style of playing. The circles are tiny and there's an absurd number of players alive for the space we get left. PUBG and Fortnite are both exactly like this, and ranked Apex is no exception, as teams are more inclined to play slower and safer to guarantee the best possible placing, rather than risking going for as many kills as possible and copying that delicious third party. Now this is where Wattson is insanely good, like insanely good, I cannot overstate that. Not only does she truly fortify a position in a way no other character can at the moment, but she does it so well that if an enemy squad really wants to push you as hard as possible, assuming you play it properly, it will take them a huge amount of time to even do anything as put a kink in your armor, and by then another squad has usually rocked up on them, leaving you the option of turning the tables on them and forcing the other two squads into a far less comfortable position. Her weakness, just like Caustic, is she requires setup. The constantly random positioning of the zone means you'll be forced out of your fortress, and honestly that's a good thing. No character should be able to deal with everything themselves, and this is where other teammates can come in to help mitigate this weakness. Whether it's a Pathfinder to set a zipline out into an all new area quickly, or a Wraith to port your squad further away. She synergizes surprisingly well with some of the more offensive characters, as long as those players keep in mind what Wattson brings to the team, which is a solid defense. And this is kind of what I was getting at before with how good her passive is that it's true you can't stay in the same place forever, and you would think that that would be what ends Wattson's career. But fortunately for her, this passive of hers allows her to use ultimate accelerants to consistently get her ultimate up all the time, to the point where if you move to a new zone, you'll have another ultimate ready to go. And I didn't mention it before, but standing by your ultimate also supercharges the regeneration rate on her electrical fences, so she can get one generator down and then have a bunch of other fences ready to go. As I said at the start of the video, it is really early at the moment and people are still running all sorts of different styles of comps and rank to get a feel for how they're playing. She is no pre-nerf Pathfinder at the end of the day, and I think that there will be compositions that don't run her to play a more aggressive style and force the favor as much as they can. But I think she is one of only two characters where you can reliably justify having her in every single team comp, which is her and Wraith. I think there is a justification for having these two characters in every single lineup, and while that may change over time, watching the way rank gets played now, It seems that other people would definitely agree with that, as Wraith and Wattson are by far the only two constants we see so far in the competitive meta. It hasn't been fully tested much, we just haven't had the time to do so. But what we know now is that Wattson is here and she's fucking good. And learning how to play her effectively is going to be super important if your squad wants to dominate Season 2.